Yeah, that's ridiculous. I mean, NATO has provoked this. Russia is put NATO on notice. They're going to be attacked. The attacks will start in Ukraine against NATO sites, personnel, and installations, but it will be confined to Ukraine. This, I think, was a false flag. I think it was a drone launch from Ukraine. That they had taken a previous Russian drone that had fallen in Ukraine, dressed it up, sent it off to hit. This is in Constanta. Constanta is the location for one of the for what is going to be the largest NATO base in Europe. U.S. military will be there. So I guarantee you, if Russia is going to hit Constanta, they're not going to use it just one damn drone. Okay, they're going to go in with Kinshal missiles, Iskander missiles, Oreshnik missiles. It will be a massive strike. This was an irritant at best. I doubt if it was an errant Russian drone that went off course. Possible, but it was certainly not a deliberate attack by Russia on Romania. And this is being used by the Europeans as a pretext to, again, ramp up the rhetoric, ramp up the actions against Russia. And earlier this week, Sergei Lavrov, speaking with Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State of the United States, put him on notice. Basically, get your personnel out of Kyiv because we're going to take out all of the relevant military intelligence targets that are there.
So why do you think Vladimir Putin, because I don't see a statement from him yet, why do you think there's no statement from Russia about this? Because this is all over, like, for people who haven't seen, it's all over Western media right now. Yeah. And, people are saying that, look, we told you that Russia was going to go after NATO countries. I personally don't believe that Russia would have done this because it does not make any sense. It really doesn't. In Romania, of all places, right? It seems like there's something funny that's going on here, but it also seems as though there are other forces at work that do want an escalation and do want some type of reason to go after Russia as well.
Yeah. No, these folks have a death wish. They're crazy. Don't poke the bear, because the bear will get up and can run faster than you and will eat you. And that's what's going to happen now to Europe. Yeah, remember, Putin right now is in Kazakhstan. He's, I think, headed back from Kazakhstan, so he's on a plane, not in a position to be able to communicate. But again, let's look at what the actual so-called attack. One drone. Russia doesn't use one drone. Russia uses lots of drones if they're using just drone attacks. And they routinely do not hit civilian centers. They have avoided throughout the last 12 years of this war civilian targets. And people say, oh, how can you say that? It's real easy. Give me the list of names of Ukrainian civilians that have been killed by the Russians. It's a short list. Compare that with the list, if you did it, of civilians that the Israelis have killed in Gaza, West Bank, Lebanon. Israel has no regard at all for civilian casualties. The Russians have gone great pains. And it's just like the other night, you had the hundreds of ballistic missiles and drones hitting Kyiv, and I think a total of 4 dead. So clearly, Russia's not trying to see how many people it can kill. It's trying to destroy the infrastructure so that people can't work there anymore. That's true. And so again, in this context, was this really a Russian drone? Was it an errant air defense missile shot by Romania that crashed into the building? We don't know. But what I do know for a fact is that if Russia was going to attack Romania, it wouldn't do it with just one lousy drone. It'd be a full package.
Yeah, for people who are not aware, just to show, they don't want to escalate things with NATO. We've seen those speeches from Vladimir Putin multiple times that's the last thing that they want. And everything that you see happening with Russia and Ukraine, with this war that has lasted as long as it has, it also just goes to show, like we've said before, Ukraine cannot beat Russia. But yet at the same time, this war seems to have no end in sight. And it seems like, and we've heard other leaders in other NATO European countries allude to the fact that Russia's going to attack Poland. So it makes me wonder, is there going to be a false flag attempt in Poland?
Sure. No, I think there will be. Look, some people said, okay, well, if Russia's making these threats now, why did they wait 4 years to do this? Why didn't they do this sooner? And I think the explanation is very simple. Russia recognized that if it started targeting all of the intelligence and military sites where there were U.S. and other European personnel stationed there, that in killing Westerners, that it would increase the chance that NATO would declare war, get involved with the war. Russia was not going to kick off a war with NATO until Russia was ready to handle it, in terms of build up enough missile inventory, build up artillery inventory, build up tanks, build up armored personnel carriers, build up air power across the board. Well, they're there now. They're built up. Now they're ready. And that's why you saw, starting in just about 3 weeks ago, when Dmitry Polyansky, Ambassador Polyansky, he was on Danny Davis's show Deep Dive, and he started talking very explicitly about Russian retaliation against the Europeans. Now, I know Dmitry, and that he wasn't speaking off the cuff. He wasn't just riffing and saying, hey, I got some great ideas. Let me tell you what I think. No, he was following direction he was getting from Sergei Lavrov. 3 days after Dmitry said that, Sergei Rybkov, the deputy foreign minister, went online, and he was saying the same thing, the same tough message directed at Europe. And then when Lavrov spoke with Secretary of State Marco Rubio earlier this week, he made it very clear. He was carrying water for Vladimir Putin. This was Vladimir Putin's direction, not Sergei Lavrov's opinion. So the Russians have turned a corner now. It was the attack on that dormitory, that university dormitory, that killed mostly young women, a few men, but mostly young women, that has just now pushed the Russians over the edge. The Russian, if this was democratic, if they put it to the Russian people, they were already nuked Europe. Europe would have hit Europe already with nuclear weapons. Putin has been the break, but now Putin is, unlike Donald Trump, who's leading a war that the public doesn't support. Putin's leading a war that he's got massive public support, actually for stronger action. So that's what I think we're going to see now in the coming days, and this attempt by the Europeans, particularly to use Romania as a false flag to justify a European response, it's going to end badly for them. Europe does not have the military depth or strength, and as far as the progress of this war, the main reason the Russians have moved slowly is to avoid civilian casualties and to avoid their own casualties, to minimize the loss of Russian personnel. And despite these wild claims from Ukrainian and Western sources that Russia's had lost millions, absolutely not true. It is a lie. It is a deception. But Russia doesn't feel the need to go out and combat that. They'll show results on the ground. And again, in this last week, you're seeing advances north in Sumy and Kharkiv, which are up to the north. Further advances to the west in Donetsk by the Russian army, and then south and southwest of there in Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhia, further advances by the Russian military. They're going forward. They're not going backwards. So I actually think Putin is pushing the general staff now. We're going to end this thing this year. So I don't see this dragging on for years to come, even though you see some in the West talking about wanting to do that.
And what does end this thing mean? Because I know, like he said before, that he's going to wrap this up. Yeah. But what does that look like? And what does it look like for Ukraine?
The Russians will capture and take control of Kyiv and Odessa. The Ukrainian military will no longer be able to function. Now, some have claimed, okay, well, then they'll start an insurgency, and that'll hurt Russia. God, these people need to read some damn history, for God's sake. Let's go back to 1950, when the CIA and MI6 were busy organizing an insurgency of Ukrainians that were fighting then against the Soviets. That lasted 5 years. And at the end, the Soviets wiped them out. Let's go ahead to 1999. Again, Western-backed Islamic insurgents in Chechnya. These were radicals that the U.S. had funded in Afghanistan previously. They started a war with Russia, and that lasted about 11 years. It was bloody, but at the end, Russia defeated them and then restored Chechnya as a strong part of the Russian Republic. My point in this is Russia's been there and done that, okay? They've been through fighting insurgencies. They've done it successfully, unlike the United States. So, again, this is a Western pipe dream. They think, oh, we can Russian this way. They don't understand the Russian people at all.
When we talk about Europe, it's interesting because they keep trying to convince people that Vladimir Putin is going to attack Poland and other countries in Europe. They are definitely behind Ukraine. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, when Zelensky petitioned to join NATO, they said no.
Yeah, I know. Well, and join same with the EU. Because when they start looking at the particulars, it's like, oh my God, we don't want those people part of our club. They're gonna disrupt the lives of farmers in Poland and Romania and Germany and the Czech Republic and Slovakia, et cetera. Throughout Europe, they can't have that. So yeah, no, this is Ukraine is the proverbial redheaded stepchild, and not getting the secondhand clothes, getting the hand-me-down food, not getting, just not receiving what it thinks it, as Zelensky wrote this blistering letter to Donald Trump, damn it, give me all this other stuff. And, if Trump had it, he could probably give it, but he doesn't even have it to give, So the United States has made its choice. Its favorite son is Israel, and Ukraine is now in the back seat. It's up to the Europeans to fund that. Europeans talk a good game, but when it comes time to actually write the check and send the weapons and do this and that, the Europeans they're hesitant.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I can see that. I just think, yeah, Ukraine is going to be basically left out in the wind.
Yeah,
because NATO doesn't want them. I think Zelensky thought that was really going to happen after this war started. NATO doesn't want them. There were Ukrainian soldiers, according to Zelensky, that went to help Israel, helped to fight with Israel. This is crazy that they don't even have enough of their own soldiers.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just, they're all over the place, and a lot of people are not reporting on this, but Ukraine is backing Israel.
Yeah, which is. How much stranger does life get? Because the Ukrainian government is essentially a Nazi government. They embrace the Nazi ideology. And when we say that, what do we mean? While there are a lot of people, the whole issue of the Holocaust comes up and people say, oh, there wasn't a Holocaust. I'll come back to simply this. Germany is about the only country. Well, it's the only country in the 20th century, to my knowledge, that passed a law that would discriminate against people based upon ethnicity. Maybe South Africa could have been the other one. But the Nuremberg laws explicitly designed to say, if you're Jewish, you're not a human being. And so that was the foundation for basically trying to ultimately exterminate this group of subhumans as the Nazis envisioned it. So here, jump ahead. That is embraced by the Banderites, the Bandera group. And now they're aligning themselves with Israel. And more importantly, Israel's aligning itself with them. It's like, guys, I thought this was like never again. We're like, we're going to oppose this kind of ethno supremacy, except Israel's found it very convenient to embrace the same kind of ethno supremacist logic, but they apply it to the Palestinians. So in this scenario, it is the Jew, and it's really the Zionists, because, as you know, there are a lot of Jews that do not embrace this and reject this. But the Jew is the one who's supreme here, and these Amalek are, God tells us to destroy them. They're not even human beings. They shouldn't be allowed to live. Kill them, kill their children, kill the men, the women, the children, the dogs, the cattle, kill it all. And you're saying, gee, yeah, that no wonder they find common ground with these Bandera people.
Do you think some of them may have gone to Ukraine? Because I do know that after World War II, some of the Nazi members went to Argentina. Yes.
Oh, I know all about that. And Argentina is such a weird place, because on the one hand, you have the largest Jewish population in the Western Hemisphere outside of New York City. So like New York City is number one, and then you get to the Jewish population in Buenos Aires, it's like number two. So you got an enormous Jewish influence in Argentina, living side by side with the descendants of Nazis. And in fact, the Germans went out and they built, there are in Western Argentina, German cities. I mean, you go there and you're in Germany. You're not in Buenos Aires. You're not in Argentina. So it really is it's a contradiction, because the past, some of the quote terrorist incidents that they tried to blame on Hezbollah or Hamas, you could actually point to more of a possible Nazi, this fascist influence that was there, and so you got that tension built right into that society. So this is, I saw it firsthand.
Yeah, I think like the big question a lot of people have is what's going to happen when this does come to an end? What happens to Zelensky? Is he going to stay in Ukraine, or do you think he's going to flee and go somewhere else?
I think he will try to flee and go somewhere else. The question is, will he be killed before he gets to do that? I really think we're looking, then people say, you've predicted this before. Yeah, I have. I've been wrong. But I don't see how this is sustainable. And so what would we look for it to be sustainable? We'd look for either the United States and or the Europeans stepping up and saying, hey, we got to pump more money into Ukraine. Well, we're not seeing that. We're seeing the opposite. Hey, let's give Ukraine more weapons so that they'll have them. We're seeing the opposite. They're not giving more weapons. They're giving less, to the point that Zelensky is literally begging, please, send more. And part of the problem is the United States doesn't have more to send because our production lines are down. We're dependent upon China for rare earth minerals that we don't have, so we can't produce the weapons. So it's just, we've got that. So you're not seeing an increase in financial aid. You're not seeing an increase in military aid. You're not even seeing an increase of what I'd call rhetorical assistance, where we're going to stand with Ukraine to the bitter end. Not hearing that out of Washington, D.C. these days. And then internally for Ukraine, they don't have a growing supply of people lining up saying, hey, we want to join the fight. Please let us enlist in the army. No, they're having to drag people off the street. And, it's always a brawl or a fight of some kind. So this is, and at the same time, Russia is now stepping up its attack on
panic coming from Donald Trump at this point.
Yeah, no, you're right. And the panic is based in the realities of the oil market, that despite Trump's happy talk about, oh, we're net oil exporters, we got this dominant position in the world. There is Danny Davis hosted this geologist who's an oil expert named Art Berman. It was either yesterday or the day before, and I'd encourage your viewers and listeners to go listen to that, because I found it eye-opening. He talking about the actual state of the oil industry, and he used some good metaphors with alcohol. So he says, it's one thing we like to talk about oil like we talk about alcohol, but the fact of the matter is there is a big difference between 2.3 beer, Miller Lite, and let's say a Cabernet from Napa, and a bottle of Jack Daniels or some tequila out of Mexico. Okay, those are all alcohol, but they have different effects. And the same is with oil. The oil that the United States produces, he likened to like 2.3 beer. It doesn't have a lot of actual uses. It's a very light oil. The oil that's needed to make diesel, that moves all of our trains and trains and ships and trucks, that's a heavy oil that comes out of Canada, comes out of Venezuela, comes out of the Persian Gulf, comes out of Russia. And so the United States actually is a net importer of that oil. And the price of that oil keeps going up, not down, despite the claim of, the price per barrel is coming down. And so I think there are at least some in the Trump administration that are appropriately panicked to recognize that the economic impact on the United States is going to be one that'll continue to feed inflationary fires and suppress economic growth. And so these are bad trends for an administration that wants to try to, make some, hold off a slaughter in the midterms. So yeah, that's where this panic's coming from. Plus, they think we could bully the Iranians. The Iranians hold the cards here. They hold the Trump cards. They control the Strait of Hormuz, and there is not a thing we can do militarily to break that hold. Some people think that we can. Absolutely not, because the Iranians have a multi-layered defense. There are mines in the water. They've got many submarines. They've got underwater drones. They have drones that sit on top of the water. They've got actual fast boats with a Navy crew that can fire anti-ship missiles. They've got aerial drones, and they've got both short-range and intermediate range ballistic missiles that are located miles inside Iranian territory, but they can fire into the Gulf, and the United States can't stop that. So until you eliminate all of those threats, then at that point, an insurance company will say, okay, we'll insure a ship going into the Persian Gulf. But that's actually probably never going to happen until the point that Iran says, okay, the strait is open for these kinds of ships that pay the environmental fee that we're charging to us or pay it to Oman. You get to come and go. But the other ships that are aligned with Israel, United States, you don't get to come and go at will. So that's the reality.
Yeah, I think a lot of Americans, when we think about like an oil crisis or increase, we're thinking about what we pay at the pump, right? And most of us don't use diesel, but a lot of people don't think about all the trucks that have to use diesel to move, like whether it's food or other supplies as well. Like they rely on that diesel fuel. So Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth, I feel like they've been talking a big game as if we don't need it, but we do.
Yeah, well, yeah, you were a baby girl. I'm not even sure you were born back in the 70s when we had that first oil embargo. So I was in high school back then, and all of a sudden you start seeing gas lines appear, and the inflation took off. It was, it really damaged the economy. And that's where Gerald Ford came up with his famous button, WIN, win, whip inflation now. That was, so, and that was all of that was sort of a consequence of a stupid foreign military adventure. We had just spent 16 years in Vietnam. We had lost 58,000, 59,000 soldiers, sailors, Marines. We had bankrupted our country. And it was as a result of that deficit that we ran to fight that war that Nixon ended up pulling us out of the gold standard and creating, and then Kissinger creates the petrodollar, which marked the birth of the relationship between the United States and these Persian Gulf countries. Where we are today now with those Persian Gulf countries, boy, they're on the ropes and they're sucking wind because they have suffered significant damage to their economies. Cash flow, which used to come in regularly, is not coming in now because of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, I've heard about those gas lines in the 70s. I heard those stories from people, and I'm just like, wow, that's crazy and alarming. And when we're looking at the money aspect of how much this war is actually costing,
goes with that 300 billion, then I could see Iran saying, okay, then we're not going to charge a fee to get through the Persian Gulf, because they were going to use that money to rebuild the damage that the United States has inflicted in Iran. But you know, I've listened to some comments by Stephen Miller, and I really don't know if he actually believes the nonsense he's saying, or if he knows that he's lying, but that he's got to put on put the lipstick on this pig and pretend that it's Marilyn Monroe. That he claims that the Iranian economy is devastated. They've got hyperinflation, and Scott Bessent's also talking about we're destroying the Iranian economy. And I'm looking, guys, do you realize now Iran has sold more oil in the last 3 months than it did in the previous 3 months before the war started, and it's selling it at 3 to 4 times the price it used to receive. So it's actually getting more money in, and a lot of that money it's not being handled in dollars, which the U.S. can seize. It's being handled in Chinese banks, yuan. And so all of a sudden, Iran's got ample access to credit via Chinese banks, and trade with China and Russia is up. The trade routes to Russia via the Caspian Sea, wide open. Trade routes with China via both air bridge, through transport planes, as well as the railroad line that runs from China all the way to Iran. That's working. And then in Pakistan, you got 7 land routes. Iran's actually doing a lot better now than it was 3 months ago, surprisingly. Wow. And that's what the United States, that's what these cats don't understand.
That's crazy. I want to show you this too, because Pete Hegseth, they sent him to talk.
We're keeping our ships 200 nautical miles off the coast of Iran, because if they get any closer, they get hit with anti-ship missiles. So we're afraid to go any closer. And the Marines, they're not going to land on any island there because they can't get their landing craft close enough to the islands to land. Yeah, this is all delusional nonsense. And the United States has failed to inflict the crushing blows on Iran that we claimed. Just the opposite. It's not Iran that's had to close 13 military bases throughout the Gulf. It's the United States. And right now, what I'm hearing is both the Saudis and Qataris who are working. Number one, the Saudis have just signed some security arrangements and treaties with Pakistan. So Pakistan is given the guarantees to protect, to have a military alliance essentially with Saudis, and to provide them with nuclear protection. So Saudi Arabia is now under a nuclear umbrella, courtesy of Pakistan. Against who? Against Israel. It's not against Iran. Yeah, that happened last week. So again, this get no coverage in the West. Qatar and Saudis have both told the United States, you need to go find someplace else to, put your planes. We've already seen, Trump had to call off Operation Project Freedom, use military force, air power to try to open the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, after the Saudis told him, said, you're not using our airspace. No. Shut it down. U.S. had to shut it down. So that's for real. And I think what these Persian Gulf states have realized is they cannot trust the United States. The United States talks a good game but doesn't deliver. And they promised to protect Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and it turned out they could not protect them when Iran began retaliating for those countries, allowing their land to be used as a springboard for attacking Iran. So it's, we're witnessing a fundamental change in what Russia and China refer to as the security architecture of the Persian Gulf.
So Pakistan offered protection to Saudi Arabia?
Yep. In fact, Pakistan's already deployed, I think, 8,000 troops into Saudi Arabia. So,
oh my God.
Yeah, they're putting their money where their mouth is. And, you can't rule out. Let me give you a scenario that you may think is clearly far-fetched. If this negotiation process breaks down and the United States is threatening something on the nuclear side, I wouldn't be surprised to see either North Korea or Pakistan, who are both nuclear powers, provide a nuclear weapon to Iran where Iran could detonate to demonstrate, okay, we got a nuke now. I could see that possibly happening. And if that happens, all of a sudden, we're in a whole new ballgame, because the concept of Israel then being able to use a nuclear attack on Iran would face the possibility of a nuclear retaliation by Iran. And so that actually might push us to a point where we would actually get some real progress with the Israelis getting back in their pen, stop their attempt to destroy the Palestinians and Hezbollah, and then maybe, just maybe, have a path to peace. There will be no Abraham Accord until such time as the people of Palestine are protected and have a state.
This just goes to show you again that Saudi Arabia is willing to work with different people, because like they ally with the West, but they've also had conversations with BRICS as well. I mean, they kind of, they look at what's best for their interests.
Yeah.
And that's what it seems like to me. And Donald Trump, like, putting this pressure on all the other Gulf states, telling them that they have to sign these Abraham Accords. This is he should be embarrassed. Donald Trump should be embarrassed.
Yeah, but the man has no sense of shame, unfortunately. This is, and look, we're presented in the West with a picture of the Gulf Arabs as somehow a united front. Come on, folks, read your history. Just 8 years ago, the Saudis and the Emiratis were trying to, they imposed a blockade on Qatar because of Qatar's relationship with Turkey, and because Qatar was providing support to Hezbollah. And so the Saudis and the Emiratis tried to, starve Qatar, even though at the time Qatar is a main base for the United States military. Who came to Qatar's aid? Not the United States. Iran. Iran began, think of that. Iran, who was already heavily embargoed, nonetheless was providing humanitarian assistance to Qatar. So you had that. And then just, within the last 2 years, you've had the Saudis and Emiratis, pissing all over each other and threatening each other with, war and attack. So as I said, what you got here are a bunch of, ununited Arab Muslim countries. And it's in that environment that China is now intervening, going to each one, along with Russia, and offering a new path forward of economic cooperation. And, the nice thing you get when you enter into economic relations with Russia and China, you don't get all the drama. It's not like you got some diva boyfriend who, he has to be treated in the right way and wear the right clothes. Because with the United States, all you get is drama, for God's sake. With a big heavy dose of Israel. And we saw Trump threatening, you want to sign on this peace deal? Well, you got to sign up to the Abraham Accords. and the Saudis basically said NFW. No effing way.
Oh.
As did Qatar. So,
yeah. I was just going to say, I'm not sure if you saw this, but ex-spy Jonathan Pollard, there was a video going around of a recent interview he just had where he blatantly admits that you were mentioned Turkey. Speaking of Turkey, he said that Turkey and Egypt is next.
Yeah. Yeah. I watched that and I said, man, he's on drugs or something. Of course, you look at him, he looks like Jabba the Hutt from Star Wars with a beard. Okay. It's like the guy he hasn't said no to a donut or bagel in a long time. Again, think about how crazy this is. Think of the size of the Egyptian army. Think of the size of the Turkish army. And unlike the Israeli army, the Turkish army is actually a professional, modern military force who also happens to have the backing of NATO. And here's Israel talking about going to war with Turkey. Again, this shows you how divorced from reality these people are. Because they've been sheltered and protected by the United States for so long, they have not actually had to deal with someone. And they think, and I did see that Pollard video, and he was talking about how they've handled Iran. You call this handling Iran? You know, you guys are the ones begging for the ceasefire after 5 weeks of getting blasted with Iranian ballistic missiles. It wasn't Iran going around saying, "Oh, we got to stop Israel and the United States from hitting us." Nope, just the opposite. So, yeah, people like Pollard, it's just, he's a reminder that even if you get rid of Bibi Netanyahu, you still got the same disgusting people that are going to want to continue the war.
Yep, that is so true. Larry, thank you so much for your time. Can you let everybody know where they can follow your work?
Sonar21.com. That's the easiest place to go. And appreciate anybody coming in, read, comment, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me you don't like my shirts. I don't care.